You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
For the community, by the community.
Hi, and thank you for joining me yet again for Two Guys and a Lot of Wine. Unfortunately, Jim's in Boston, so we have our favorite guest, McLean Okeson from Worldwide Wines. And thank you again for joining me,
My
McLean.
pleasure, Bobby.
And I think this is your third visit on our show.
Third time's a charm.
Third time's charming. I know Jim's disappointed that he can't be on the South African show because that's going to be the topic for tonight is South African wines. But we're going to drink for Jim and tell him how good the wines were.
I like it.
I want to thank you also for this weekend and also Jatu Huntley for letting me entertain you guys and also bringing wine, another great wine dinner at our house. We tasted some great stuff and you exposed me to some stuff I haven't tasted before. So thank you, and thank you Jatu for joining us, and we hope to do it again soon.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, so our topic for tonight is South African wine. Now, I've had South African wine. I don't know that much about it other than what I've had is good. So I'm actually looking forward to learning more on this show about what you can tell us about South African wine.
Well, I was like you before I started working with this portfolio, and it's kind of an embarrassment of riches, as they say, of South African wine. And it's funny, so you brought two wines and I brought three, and they're actually all in my portfolio. So you managed to pick two bottles randomly there that are mine as well. So it's kind of exciting.
Awesome.
And I guess, a couple things about South Africa is a very long, interesting history, colonized by the Dutch. So you'll see a lot of the names of the wines are actually of Dutch persuasion. And a lot of the wine made in South Africa was made under one large co-op for many years. And so that system has kind of gone away along with the apartheid, and kind of a new dawn of quality winemaking for South Africa. So there's a lot for the wine drinker out there.
Yeah, and at varying price points that are certainly accessible to most people.
Absolutely.
And I think the first one we're going to be tasting tonight is Indaba, which is the Chenin Blanc, which is one of my favorite type of whites. And I think it's one of the most widely produced grape varietal in South Africa, isn't it?
Yeah, it does beautifully down there.
Yeah, and it's a very fun bottle. Reach over here and get it. Everything is sustainable, I think, too, from most of the vineyards.
Yeah, so you'll notice a lot of producers use Stelvin enclosures as screw tops, and a lot of them have this certified sustainability sticker on the side. I think almost every single bottle has that. So there's a big commitment to preserving the diversity of flora and fauna in their country.
It's ironic you're talking about that, because our last show, or at least that was on last month, well, it's on last month, people were watching this month, is we did different wine enclosures. And I think Jim and I covered that particular one.
Yeah.
So, so this is a Chenin Blanc. I always find a Chenin Blanc kind of mild, but at the same time,
has a lot of nice stone fruits to it, like orchard fruits, like peach, and add some nice acid to it.
Yeah,
as well.
never mistake a Chenin Blanc for Pinot Grigio, because there's a lot going on in here.
It's true.
And there's a hint of lime. I know in the tasting notes I read there was a little hint of lime. And if you like that, if you like a little citrus in your whites, like a Saviem Blanc, this has it. It has that little citrusy kick of lime in the back of the mouth.
It's really nice. And I think Indaba, I could be incorrect, but I think it means coming together. And so they really work on sustainable viticulture and kind of reaching out to the community as well. That's it's imported by Cape Classics. So that's kind of their.
And I think it's one of wine enthusiasts' always top best buys.
Yeah, it's so
class.
good. And Chenin does beautifully all over parts of South Africa. Lots of great high-end Chenin Blanc as well, which is fun.
That's interesting, because before we even get into the next wine, people might not be familiar. There are high-end Chenin Blancs, and that might surprise some people. But most people think, $5 or $10, $15, $16, $17. But there's stuff that's pretty higher than that, correct?
Yeah, and I think for someone who's in wine collecting, you might go to the Loire Valley in France to look for kind of high-end or age-worthy Chenin. And we do see some producers in South Africa also producing these high-end, age-worthy Chenins. But a lot of it's just kind of beautiful wine to kind of drink in the moment.
Yeah, and this is one of them.
This is great.
I mean, the show's airing in November. There's a little nip in the air. You know, it's a little chilly out. This can certainly, it's not a summer white. I definitely say this can hold its own
Yeah, absolutely.
in the fall.
Good transitional white.
It is. So that's going to be a thumbs up for me.
Yeah,
it's my first time having
I
one
love this
down
wine.
there.
It was an easy one.
And I'm not going to give her any, if I don't like anything that McLean brought, I'm not going to say I like it just because she was kind enough to bring some wine on the show. So I will tell you whether I like it truthfully.
I know you will.
I will.
I know you're true.
All right.
Cause.
So, of course, one of my favorites is the Saviem Blanc. So I will let you do a little discussion on this beauty right here.
Yeah, so this is Beyond Saviem Blanc. So don't make me say the full name of the winery because it's long and it's in Dutch, and I only have a certain amount of memory for that. So the locals call it Bayten, B-A-Y-T-E-N. And the longer name means beyond expectations. So that's why the entry-level Saviem Blanc they call Beyond. So this is like an entry label for the winery. And they also make another slightly more high-end Saviem Blanc. I mean, nothing crazy, nothing.
So the price point is something like this?
This is about $11.99. The flagship Saviem Blanc is more that 15 to 17 range. So nothing too crazy, but I like this. I sell this to a lot of my restaurants because it sits nicely in between that kind of like, it's not Napa, you know, it's not oaked, it's not higher in alcohol, it's not New Zealand, it's not pink grapefruity, it's not too aggressive on acid. So it's kind of a beautiful blend of what Saviem can be.
Yeah, people love Saviem Blanc, and I like all of them. Like my wife, for instance, only likes the real Marlboro type, but I like them all.
This is a really nice mouthfeel. There's some creaminess to it, and neither of the two whites are oaked. So fresh and clean, but some ripeness to it, which is great.
You know, you are absolutely right. There is a creaminess to the Saviem Blanc, which a lot of people might not be familiar with because they're used to that strong, citrusy, over-the-top pow.
Yeah.
This is much more mild, much more creamier, and you still get the characteristics which people like about a Sauv Blanc.
Yeah, it's lovely. I love this. So a small producer, and yeah, really under the radar. So it's, if you can find it, it's good to have.
Now, we opened up these beforehand, so this was also one of those caps you were talking
Yeah,
about.
Sylvan enclosure. So you don't have to worry about corked wine. There's no cork to be had.
So when you have a Sylvan enclosure, and you say you have half a bottle left, how long would that, once you put the top back on, how long would that last in your refrigerator?
About the same as a regular cork,
It will.
to be honest. Yeah, I mean, you stick it in the fridge and, you know, a day or so.
So unless you actually suck the air out, it's not any different in regards to how it's going to preserve the wine once it's open.
Exactly.
Well, this was delicious too.
Yeah, cheers.
Now, did Worldwide Wines always have a large presence in South African wine, or is this something that you guys just really got into recently?
You know, ever since I've been with the company, they've always had great producers, and then our suppliers as well. We have several great suppliers, Vineyard Brands, Cape Classics, that really have fantastic producers. One of the few that we don't have on the table today is Ken Forrester and Mulderbosch. Those are two
I've heard
kind
of
of
that,
two kind of classic producers that kind of make it into more of the mainstream market, which is great for South Africa. I think a problem South Africa has is retailers want to put South Africa in its own section. I don't think many people walk in to a wine store and say, "Excuse me, sir, where's your South African section?" Like, on occasion it does happen, but not often enough for the retailer to keep
It's
things
fascinating that you should
in
say
stock and
that,
fresh.
because when I looked for South African wine for this show, I didn't have any in my collection downstairs. It was marketed with Australian.
Yeah,
That
which is
bothered me a little bit.
It's a little, it's unfortunate. It's kind of like the organic wine section where things can kind of go to die if you're not careful.
Yeah, I was a little disturbed. I'm not disturbed is not the right word, but when I saw Yellowtail, along with other South African wines, all in the same,
And they're completely
Conglomerate.
different terroirs.
I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, the fascinating thing about South Africa is that they're so far south. The cooling ocean currents come from Antarctica. That's how far south they are. Antarctica winds at night to like cool off the ocean waters, which in turn cool down the grapes at night. So that's how far south they are. It's very different terroir. So I think it's kind of like, oh, I don't know where these wines should go in my shop. But I mean, for me, I would put that Beyond Saviem Blanc up against any New Zealand any day.
You know, it's interesting also what you mentioned about the cool temperatures, because some of my research into this show, hasn't there been, or is there still some argument about originally the temperatures when they started producing Cabernets, it was originally produced cooler in cooler environments, and it sort of had a more green, more minerally characteristic to their reds.
So for Bordeaux, Bordeaux is typically a blend of Merlot and Cabernet, and they used to blend a lot of grapes. Petit Verdot, Cab Franc, Malbec used to be used in there, and that was to help with the ripeness issue. So Merlot ripens early and Cabernet after, so you got more well-rounded wines when you added more grapes to it. So you're completely correct on that. Cabernet can be very green if it's not dealt with properly.
Yeah, I thought that there was some controversy. There's two schools of thought from South Africa, actually, or people that like South African wines, about the cooler temperature cabs and the warmer temperature cabs in regards to...
Yeah, there's so much diversity down there. You can play around with all kinds of styles and soil types, and it's fascinating. I hear it's beautiful. I've not been. It's on definitely my bucket list.
It's a long trip.
It's a long trip, but...
So I'm going to clean my palate before we go into the next one.
All right. All right,
Hopefully that doesn't make too much noise on the camera.
You chew, and then I'll talk about the first. Right? How about that? So this is, I brought you Fairview Pinotage. Now, Fairview has been making wine since the early 1600s. And Charles Back, his grandfather, purchased the property back in the 1930s. So it is a very old estate. They produce a lot of great wines, and his family is still running the business. So Pinotage is fascinating.
I'm anxious to hear more, because it's not one that I drink often.
Pinotage is a cross. It was a cross of two different grapes. It was engineered in like 1925, 1923. And it was a blend, a cross of Pinot Noir, which we're all familiar with, and a grape called Cinsault. And Cinsault, when it was grown in South Africa, they called it Hermitage or Hermitage.
There we go. That makes
sense.
sense.
So Pinotage, Pinot, Hermitage.
Yep.
So this kind of oddball grape became the flagship red grape for South Africa. And it's got a bad rap over the years. And let's see. This is beautiful.
I think so.
A lot of Pinotage in particular, it's very sensitive to temperatures, especially when you're fermenting. And so a supplier that I worked with that works with a lot of South African wines, there's a certain aroma about coming from certain South African wines. It smells like he put a Band-Aid on a warthog's butt, which I thought was completely unpleasant, but I knew exactly somehow what he was talking about. Which this wine does not have.
Well, I don't get that in the buffet at all.
I avoided that on purpose. And some of them think that it's a little bit of terroir, something, the kind of yeast that they use gets that kind of Band-Aid, kind of smoked aroma, or a warthog aroma, and some when you ferment at too high a temperature. So that there's just some lingering questions about that. But I thought this particular Pinotage is super classy and no warthog to be found.
Well, I have to say, McLean, in almost 5 years, well, almost full 4 years. Actually, this might be our 4th year anniversary of this show, actually. I think we actually filmed our first show. But never in the history of Two Guys and a Lot of Wine was the word Band-Aid and warthog incorporated into a wine tasting.
Here to keep it fresh.
So I got to say thank you for incorporating two different terms, which I'm sure Jim's going to love. Band-Aid, a wet Band-Aid. Was that what it was?
No, but I like wet Band-Aid.
And a wet warthog?
Or maybe a Band-Aid on a wet warthog's butt.
Yeah, that takes the cake. So cheers to that one. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really would encourage anyone who thinks they've tried Pinotage before to try this particular bottle. So one of your friend of mine, Jacob at Wise Old Dog, he is not a huge fan of South African wine, which hurts me greatly because
me too.
Because of my great portfolio. And so I tasted him on this, and he loves this wine because it doesn't have any of that kind of dirty, odd quality. He's like, I want to ease people into getting to know South Africa, tasting profiles that they're comfortable with, and then kind of get to the esoteric stuff. So this is super classy. I love this wine. I think it's
well. This is definitely. I see why Jacob would like this, because this is definitely more of a French red. I think what he would like. The only thing some people might not be accustomed to is it has a bite in the aftertaste.
It's got some grip.
It hits you smoothly at first, but then that harshness, that's not the right word, but there's a flavor that kicks in on the aftertaste.
It kind of makes my my mouth dry a little bit. It's not so much a lot of tannin, but there's a little bit of grip in there, and that comes from the Senso or the Hermitage.
Once again, I understand why Jacob would like that, because he likes that. He likes that dry mouth feel sometimes with his red.
Yeah, and it kind of gets you, we have it with a meal, takeout, cheese. It'd be a great pairing to kind of play around with.
Actually, the first 3 wines we've tasted, I don't think we've talked about what we could pair that with. The 2 whites, obviously, cheeses, a light salad or chicken meal or something like that. But the Pinotage, obviously, that goes with up against steaks, roasts.
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff
fruity,
like
but it's dry, if that makes any sense.
it does make sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very nice. And kind of no warthog to be found. So that's why I wanted to bring that. That was kind of a great expression of Pinotage. And it's 2014 vintage. So because we're in the Southern Hemisphere, they're 6 months ahead. So I've actually tasted 2015 Chilean rosé, and this Pinotage is 2014. So everything it seems like, wow, that's very young, but they're already through their harvest, 6 months or so ago.
Now, is Pinotage something that can age in a cellar for a while?
Depends on the bottle. We have some higher end bottles that we sell, a little more oak aging, which I would say for a few years. This style is definitely kind of within a year or two, just fresh and easy.
So unless you're storing in some type of climate control environment, you really want to drink this in the next few years. You don't want to let that sit for a long
I don't think it gets.
You don't gain anything.
Proves. I think this is kind of in its moment right now. It's very tasty, and this is about $13.99 or so. So under 15.
That's certainly a fair price, especially for somebody who's not familiar with Pinotage and wants to try it for the first time. That's not an offensive or scary price point.
Right, and the juice is good.
Because I gotta be honest with you, that's not going to appease every red wine lover.
It's in the middle. It's medium body. It's not super light, but it's not super concentrated. So if you like that kind of burlier Cab Shiraz, it may not be your cup of tea.
No, it's my cup of tea, and that's the kind of red that I would like to sit, like if we were having a political or talking about a movie or something like that, I can sit and have a glass of this.
A little meditative.
A little meditative, yes, absolutely. All right, so we're going to go into one that I brought, which you may or may not be familiar with, the Excalibur, or the Excelsior.
You call it whatever you want.
Yeah. There we go. You've had this one, I believe.
I
right?
sell this wine, yes.
Of course you do. You said that.
I try to sell all the South African wines, almost all of them. Thank you. So I like that within the group, we were able to bring, almost unknowingly, 2 varietals that are what we call international varietals that people are comfortable with: Chardonnay, Saviem Blanc, Cabernet, Merlot. Those are all international varietals. And then 2 somewhat more indigenous varietals, which I think is great: Pinotage, and then Chenin really shines in South Africa as well. So it's a good mix for people to kind of.
McLean, I brought some notes, but I'm just going to, throw them off to the side because you know about these wines. So there's a few questions I want to ask about the Excelsior. My tasting notes. I've heard most of the time in South Africa, they tend to stick to 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. There's no blends. But that's not always the case. Sometimes there are some blends, especially our Bordeaux style cab.
Exactly.
I'm not sure if this is a 100% because I couldn't see anything on the bottle. Do you know if it's 100% or not?
I think it's 100%.
It is?
Yeah, I believe so. This is 2013 vintage. The soils are actually a little bit limestoney, so you get a lot of great texture, nice fruit concentration, and not too much new oak. There's not a lot of kind of flashy vanilla or anything like that, or coconut or anything bizarre. It's just it's all about the fruit.
There's not. I'm going to go back to my notes again because it brings up another interesting point. From what the notes on this particular wine that I've seen, I've heard people say dark fruit. There's a savoriness. There's a cedar quality to it.
Yeah, I like that cedar note.
It has spicy notes. Now, I don't think it's that spicy for a cab myself personally, but it definitely sits on the mouth very easily.
Yes.
There's nothing that's in there pounding your way. It's a very easy cab to drink.
Yeah, I was thinking how to word it. It's like, well, it's easy drinking, but it almost sounds like a slight to Cabernet.
No, you're right.
It was easy to drink Cabernet, but I think this fits the bill. It's pleasurable, which is.
But this is also different from most cabs you might be familiar with because there's all different varietals of cab, California cab, all that other stuff. But this is distinctly different than a California cab, distinctly different from a French cab. It's very unique in its own right.
It's lovely. Nice aromatics.
It's very dark and ruby, which I like in a red, especially this time of year. It's cold. You know, you want a dark red wine if you're sitting in front of the fireplace, or you know, you're at a restaurant. This something would go very well with a nice hearty meal this time of year.
Yeah, and I kind of like the idea of doing, you know, like the Indaba Chenin with like a butternut squash soup or curry or something like that.
Let's go to curry. I'm not a big butternut squash kind of guy. But you put a curry with some hot stuff in it, I'll eat that all day. Whether it's the
not too
summer,
spicy for
winter,
me,
fall. But another word that I heard when I was doing my research was the calcareous soils in South Africa. Now, calcareous is not a word I'm that familiar with. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, it's the French call it calcaire. It's limestone. So that's just.
See, the French always have to take a simple word like limestone and add a French quality to it. Makes it sound so much more elegant.
I heard it so much when I was in France a couple years ago that you just naturally start to know what that is. Like, what is calcaire? And like, calcaire, and then you're crushing. You're like, well, this is limestone. It's everywhere. Yeah, even South Africa.
And it's funny, they also said this is in the Robertson area. I think this is
Which I'm kind of less familiar. Unfortunately, my geography in South Africa is about as good as California.
Well, the tasting notes claim that it's both mineral rich and has a mineral rich grit to it, which I don't get the mineral. I couldn't say like a Bordeaux has that certain mineral-esque quality to it. I don't really get that in this.
No, there's no astringency. It's and I think that's what makes it very approachable.
I got to say, the first four tonight have been delicious. I mean, for the price point.
Yeah, thumbs up on this
I think the Excelsior is between $9.99 and $11.99. We haven't really tasted anything above the $15 mark yet, have we?
Well, I kind of cheated, and I brought one extra bottle.
Yay!
Surprise! I wanted to bring something a little more high-end because theoretically when watching this November, being close to the holidays. So once you've kind of explored the world of, you know, great value-priced South African wine, and you're ready to up the ante, perhaps for the holidays, this would be a good option.
Wow, that's an interesting color.
So this is called the Chocolate Blanc, and this is the name of a wine from a winery called Bokenhutskloof. That's my Dutch for the night. And
which was good.
Bokenhutskloof.
Of course, I don't know Dutch, but it sounded good.
That sounds good, right? And so the Chocolate Blanc, they named this wine the Chocolate Blanc. Many people thought because of the kind of richness and cocoa qualities, there might have been actually chocolate in it. That is not the case. This is not a sweet wine. So it's a blend that changes year to year, usually mostly Syrah. At this vintage, there's some Cabernet and Grenache and Cinsault, and actually there's a splash of Viognier. So what we have is what you might see as a traditional Rhone blend, Syrah, Grenache, Cinsault, splash of Viognier, and then they throw in Cabernet for South African flair.
It's like an orgy of grapes.
It pretty much is. It is a rowdy party. So they don't make a lot of this, about 1,700 barrels, which is not a lot of wine. And we ship them in 6-packs, which is a little easier to manage. So a little bit of wood on this, but... Oh.
Speaking of orgy, I need to sit down. Wow.
Get you a cigarette.
That's delicious. Now, I was afraid when I first saw that bottle, I saw the Chocolate Blanc, and I said, okay, it's going to have that really strong, chocolatey, sometimes characteristic, which I don't care for. Wow, that is not the case at all.
It's a little smoky, a little herbal, rich kind of blackberry notes to it.
This is, we originally toyed with not even opening this bottle because I thought 4 would be enough, but I'm so glad we did because this is a higher end red. And it's a blend, but when you start getting it to a price point that's a little higher up, and it's not always the case, but you really start tasting the characteristics of a good value or good quality wine.
Yeah, this would be great with lamb or veal or, you know, tenderloin. So I think we kind of get into a little more red meat season, the slow cooking. This really knocks out the park. It's a lot of wine for the money. So this retails around $30 a bottle.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and I wanted to show it because there's amazing South African wine. I've had some of the most amazing Pinot Noir and high-end Chardonnays in my life out of South Africa. And so I wanted you to taste that as well because, you know, under 15 is a sweet spot for getting people excited about South African wine. But once you're kind of in the game, you get to know the producers and what they're doing there. And the wines they're amazing. And they're all relative values.
Well, before I even ask you what's going on with Worldwide Wines in McLean for November, I got to say, the only thing I'm worried about is the name Chocolate Blanc. Because a lot of the people that might watch this show, or even people that went into a store, they're going to see that name and say, oh yeah, that's going to be chocolatey.
It does work
works against it a little bit. So that's a hidden handshake then. It's a hidden handshake wine.
If you buy this wine, you know what's up.
I like that. So what is going on with McLean Okeson and Worldwide Wines in November?
Well, we're in the busy season, and so a lot going on. I'm teaching a couple of wine classes. I do 2 Thanksgiving classes at the Wise Old Dog, our friend Jacob in West
Definitely
Hartford.
look into that because they have great wine tasting classes.
South Quaker Lane. I think there might be a couple spots open. So I do 2 classes the 2 weeks before Thanksgiving week on a Wednesday night, and we do what we call a high class and then a low class. So, you know, the chocolate black would be the high class, and then the rest of the wines would be more in the low class. So wines that you're having Thanksgiving for 4, and you like your family, and then you have the big Thanksgiving where you're not sure what people appreciate certain things, but you want to drink good stuff. So it's.
We've talked about this many times. A lot of times you do not want to pull out the good stuff for big family, especially Thanksgiving. Because in my opinion, if you have a traditional Thanksgiving meal, a lot of wines don't actually pair very well with Thanksgiving food. Turkey, the white meat,
It's
and stuff
tricky.
like that. It's very tricky. But I would always say give your family the good but not overly expensive wines. And then you have a second Thanksgiving party for people like me and Jim, Jitu,
Yeah.
and you have us over for more stuff. That's even
Yeah.
better. So.
It's a date.
But that was fantastic. The chocolate block I think is my favorite now for the red tonight.
Yeah, it's all sustainably done. They do a great job. Wines are beautiful down there.
And are all these wines available locally?
Yes. Yeah, this is Worldwide Wines. They're readily available. So easy breezy. I think they're around the West Hartford area. Shops in the area. So.
Yeah, and once again, if people have any questions about specific varietals of what we drank tonight, I put stuff on Facebook and they'll be able to look it up.
It was a great lineup. I think you picked great wines. Indaba Chenin's beautiful. Excelsior Cabernet is a steal, and then we tasted cool Pinotage. And
well, I went to this tasting because we've done a few shows where we're all strictly like Italian, Spanish, and I think other than the Italian, which I found the Italian wines all nice and easy. Mm-hmm. The variety of flavor profiles, I think, for the South African wines were the best.
They're so versatile.
They are so versatile. In our remaining 2 minutes of the show, I think I'm going to rate mine in order really quick.
Ooh, okay.
So for the whites, because I'm such a huge fan of Saviem Blancs, I'm going to put the Sauv first, Chenin Blanc second, but they're very close. And for the red, of course, the chocolate block, followed by the Pinotage and the Excelsior.
I like
Thumbs up on all of them.
Yeah, my thumbs. Since you did Saviem Blanc, I'm going to do Chenin first, then the SB, shake things up. I'm a sucker for this particular Pinotage. It's just more my speed. So I'm going to put that in my first for the reds. Yeah.
So as always, McLean, I know this is the third time you've been on the show. I want to thank you again for bringing great stuff. And for all our viewers out there who watch, please check us out on Facebook, Two Guys and a Lot of Wine. Check WHCTV.org. Our shows are up on demand usually pretty quickly. And also, I want to also thank WHCTV. By the time you see this show, we've already attended our big gala this year, and hopefully we raised a lot of money for both support of the station and other programming here at the station that people can enjoy. So you're part of that too because you're on the show and you make the shows enjoyable for not just me, but our viewers at home.
Thanks, Bobby.
So little toast to McLean, a little toast to Joe. Wait a minute, we can't do a toast.
Oh, that's bad luck. Right,
yeah, we have to do a quick pour before we wrap things up.
I know what you want to toast with.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Jim, this is for you. Sorry you couldn't make it. Happy November, everybody. I'm Bobby P.
I'm McLean.
And until next time, keep all of us in your wine cellar.